Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the broadcast this evening. Good evening again, sir.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to see you. How are you preparing for the coronation? Do you have an invitation to the event?
No, they invited me, but I had other plans,
Exactly. Oh, I see. Yes, of course.
I had other plans, and I had to tell them I'm sorry I can't make it.
You can make it. I'll go and represent you.
Yes, when we're all looking forward to it. Everyone is kind of waiting to see what it would be like, and quite a few stories coming out on the back of that. But we'll wait until after the event to then revisit that particular point. The Queen, for example, now Queen Consort, now being called a Queen. Interesting. On that front, but we'll come back to that particular point, sir, on that one. But I want to thank viewers and all those who were part of the town hall. And sir, we ended on the topic around space. And in the course of this week, I saw the news item of the SpaceX mission that blew up a few minutes after takeoff. And there was another one, I think it was Portugal, that was trying to send something to space that ended up, I think, in Sweden or somewhere. And I said to myself that maybe this space thing is not such a good idea now, if all of them are falling off somewhere. Well, maybe we'll put you on the next one, sir.
Look, I think there's a conspiracy going on. You are the fifth person who will suggest that the only way to solve problems in Nigeria is to put me on a SpaceX something, go. That the time I come back, if I come back, all the problem will be solved. Now, maybe you started it. Now I know who my friends are. All right.
Exactly, okay. Sir. Exactly. You are the forerunner. We'll just watch you in front as you go on that space mission.
Thank you. We'll take the program along with us.
No. With the remote thing, it's better for you to be there. In fact, it'll be a special edition. Broadcasting with Prof in space. Good, sir. But let me start the program, or before I go into the core programs this evening. We've got the situation in Sudan escalating way beyond what a lot of people would have thought. And I know you talked about it, I think it was 2 weeks ago or thereabout, or maybe even 3 weeks ago, when you said the people probably pushed too hard, and maybe they should have been more tactful in their approach to moving ahead. But now we're seeing countries flying their citizens out of Sudan. Has your view changed since 2-3 weeks ago when we talked about this, sir?
No, my view has not changed, but that's not the angle I want to go at it. Because in fact, my comments on Sudan are directly related to the core issue of the 3 town halls that we have had. Because I was sitting here listening to all kinds of people, experts, flaying Nigeria. Not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs alone. No, really, you could see the passion with which they were hitting at Nigeria. Where is Nigeria? Everybody is getting his people out. Where is Nigeria? By now, I expect Nigeria will have sent in its special forces, planes flying all over a cartoon to guarantee their safety, pulling our people out, and I will be cheering from where I am, say, yes, that's the way the giant of Africa should operate. And when I couldn't take anymore, I switched off and went there. But I was already boiling with anger because several of the people who were talking are about the age where we'll say they must have been in the university when I was a minister. And some of the colleagues on this platform will recall that I'm probably, because in fact, one of them said it to me when we met much later on in life, that I was probably the only minister that their students, led by their professors, their lecturers, mobilized against, because they thought I was out of my mind with all these militarized ideas about the power status of Nigeria. So I called a few of them, made a conference call. And I said, I suspect you guys were students when I was a minister. You, the same you, who is now shouting at the top of your voice, berating Nigeria for not sending in paratroopers, special forces, the same you were demonstrating against me when I was calling for Nigeria to have the Nigerian equivalent of the American 52nd Division. Because the 52nd Division in the United States is on 24-hour standby. It's made up of all paratroopers, so that if there is any trouble anywhere in the world, they need only 45 minutes to load up, get on board their planes, and the president said, go, they're off. And I said at that time, let's have a brigade of paratroopers. At that time, there was a sub-battalion, just only a sub-battalion. I knew about it because my brother was the thruMYeyes, was the second in command. And every weekend, they and the lieutenant colonel, who I won't mention his name, is still alive, went on parachute jump with these boys. And I thought that wasn't good enough. So I went public with asking us to have at least a battalion. And if I could get away with that, and then we will increase it to a brigade of paratroopers in the Nigerian army that will operate within West Africa. At that time, there were so many things I advocated for the Navy, including having 2 frigates, one based in the West that will look after our interests all the way to Mauritania if we need to land troops there. The other one based in the east, in the Indian Ocean, that probably we would need to talk about having a base with Mayotte or Mauritius, that will look after our interests in the east coast of Africa. I said, you guys were abusing me. Now you are abusing Nigeria. I said, do you realize that, Spain had a frigate that was sailing towards Port, Port, I've forgotten the name now. It's Port something near Saudi Arabia. Britain was sending 2 frigates in case that's where they need to send their people and so on. And you are saying, what's Nigeria doing? What's Nigeria doing? Even when Nigeria finally decided to evacuate, it had to say our boys and girls should find their way to the Egyptian border on their own. Although after intense criticism, this was then changed so that the Nigerian government will now hire a fleet of 40 buses, but there will be no military coverage. They said they have worked out plans.
Sorry, sir.
That. So I said to them, I said it at that time, that these same you people, you won't take responsibility when Nigeria finds itself in a position of weakness, because you are the people who will be cheering as universities were being multiplied as if you were having baby chickens all over the country. You were not talking about the cost. I said, but you are not blaming yourself now. Instead, unfortunately, it's the ministry you are blaming. It's even the Nigeria you are blaming for good for nothing. So you see, I got so angry even while talking, because even there were some people within the ministry who thought, what am I talking about? What will ever necessitate Nigeria having a frigate in the Indian Ocean? Yeah, but now they are now comparing Nigeria with Spain, with Portugal, with it, and they were scoring us 0-0-0. On one hand, I'm glad I'm still alive, because really a lot of them said, sorry, sir, you were right, at that time. But then they said, our demonstrations should not have stopped you. That's what people in government, that's what they're supposed to suffer. I said, yes, but it was a military government, and the military government does not want any dissent that may then get out of hands. And so I had to, keep below the radar. And eventually I got fired, for being too activist, mentally. So you see, we should always think far ahead. The problem with us in Nigeria is we always think of maybe tomorrow, and I'm being charitable. Look at when Balewa had given that speech about Africa being the centerpiece of our foreign policy. I think every foreign minister and every head of state has repeated that thing. Fine. But a time came when apartheid was over. So what else did we move on to? We moved on to, building Pan-African institutions. But the Pan-African institutions were always with limited objectives. So Sudan has shown the need for us to invest resources in our capability. Because whether we want to, there are about 5 million Nigerians since the Sudan. We got out I don't think we got up to 1,000. I don't think we got up to 1,000.
So to that point, I guess that when we look back at the war in Ukraine, just at the early start of the war, there were videos circulating on social media and different platforms that showed Nigerians not being able to get out and they had been abandoned. So one would have assumed that maybe some of the institutions that we have, there's a commission that looks after people in the diaspora, which I know have been involved this time around in trying to negotiate to get Nigerians out of Sudan. That capability is something that indeed, as you have said, should be built because we don't know where it would be needed. But the debate someone might want to have with you, sir, is that shouldn't that be part of the responsibility of the existing army or maybe police force, I don't know, in this case, to handle something like that? Why should we be thinking of a separate force to address this kind of issue?
No. I'm not thinking of a separate force. I'm not thinking of a separate force. It will be an interventionist brigade or an interventionist battalion that will be used when needed for events like this. That will be used, for example, if, say, jihadists capture your embassy somewhere in Africa, and the armed forces of that particular country are not strong enough to go in and rescue the ambassador and the staff, what do we then start to do? Do we start negotiating with the jihadists? The answer I will say yes, we will start negotiating with them as a diversion while this interventionist brigade, will go in. And if you go in with a plane, you need to now, or helicopters now will join from the frigates that you have, depending on whether it's on the West Coast or the East Coast, to now evacuate the ambassador and whatever other civilians have taken refuge in the embassy. It's not a police job. It is still a military job, but you must have the assets on the ground. In this particular case, the assets will be on those ships. Since we are not rich enough to play a global role of having, assets like the Americans do, probably almost in every country in the world or within short cut. In our case, the reason I was talking about brigades is that this brigade, the frigate, will probably have 2 or 3 helicopters on board. Of course, they'll be rotated on duty. It's not that forever. They'll be located in Mauritius, and the one based on the West Coast, will be forever located just off Liberia coast. They will be rotated with the naval forces, and the naval forces will be fighting forces. They will be the equivalent of Marines. Well, anyway, unless there are people who want to pitch in from people listening to me from their own experiences, maybe we should go on to whatever it is you have cooking for us today.
Well, I can see that Professor Akinteriwa has his video on.
Okay.
I don't know if that is an indication that you want to comment, sir. I'm happy to bring you on. Let me just allow you to unmute yourself. Do you want to unmute yourself, sir?
I had to do so. Yeah, thank you, sir. The only aspect I would like to comment on is this fact that the Nigerian giving stratum of society has never given room to new ideas. And I'm not surprised. In the scientific field, even when people come with new discoveries, colleagues will not accept. You will still need to provide more empirical studies. It will take time before they can acquiesce to that. So when uh, the big prof, when Bolaji Akinyemi is now talking about his experiences, people demonstrating against all that, this is why we are not able to make any progress in Nigeria. People can easily say in 1960, Malaysia came here, they went away with palm oil seed or whatever. Or China in the 70s, we were at par. The domestic setting was not, in fact, they would say Nigeria's case was quite better. But today, it's a different kettle of fish. So I think that um, Nigeria, since God gifted us with a professor that is always living in the future, thinking and thinking and thinking, I think we need to take advantage of all this. Whatever I suggested, you know, all we need do is to sit down and think. I remember a point that was raised and discussed by Ambassador Keshi, Ambassador Lewu. We were talking about this issue of nuclear matter. We are talking about the Treaty of Pelindaba and all those things. We have the thinkers there who can now sit down, reflect further on what Professor Akinyemi has suggested. Like Chief Jomadweke will normally say that, look, his own is to suggest, you diplomats, you workers, you are supposed to go and sit down, reflect on how to translate all these policy suggestions into action. And I think that to a great extent, it is all of us scholars that should be held responsible, not the thinker that is coming with the suggestion. When a suggestion is made, let scholars look at it. We have a good Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Osage, Osage. He is there. These are topics that you just be simply said to them to look at more critically and then come back. This is how Nigeria can actually survive in a world of conflicting interests. If people, for instance, are looking at Indian Ocean as far away, what are you doing there? But they can now see now that you refuse to acknowledge the suggestion made long time ago. Now today is a reality. And I think that um, this suggestion, let me say, its time has come for it to be looked into more deeply for actionable purposes.
Thank you very much, sir. Professor Akinyemi, the first question for you this evening, sir, is relating to South Africa and the ICC. There was the initial news that came out of South Africa that the government was trying to pull out of membership of the ICC and that whole arrangement there. And then shortly afterwards, another message came out and they said, oh, sorry, that was a miscommunication. That's not what they meant. And one of the comments that someone sent to me for the prof was, is this South Africa trying to pave a way for Putin to be able to get to South Africa because he had been there some time back, and I know that he was trying to go to South Africa not too long ago. What's your response to that maneuver by the South African government?
If this had happened in Nigeria, oh, the ministry, the presidency, the minister, everybody would have been roasted alive. They wouldn't even wait to finish killing them before they start to roast them. Because this was a statement made by the president, Cyril Ramaphosa himself, not a spokesperson for him. We are pulling out of the ICC. And that was it. Only for now sources within the presidency to say he was misquoted. Was he speaking in Zulu? Was he speaking in Xhosa? Was speaking in English? And what's happened is you have a divided ruling party on your hand. People don't really know how effective is the ruling party, the ANC, in terms of the day-to-day running of the government. So you have another wing of the ANC who said, no. Number one, we didn't discuss this. We haven't taken a decision on it. And we're having none of it. While the with the presidency itself actually wanted to get out of the ICC. And you're quite right that it is related to the warrant of arrest issued against Putin. Now there's going to be a summit of the BRICS in August in South Africa, and BRICS summits have become one of the few summits that Putin can attend since the war in Ukraine started and sanctions by the West have been imposed upon him. And now South Africa is in a quandary. Fellows, you will recall, I mean, we've been talking about Sudan. This is also about Sudan, that there was also a warrant of arrest out on al-Bashir, the president of Sudan. And he again went to South Africa for a meeting. And South Africa was told, you have a responsibility, an obligation to arrest him and hand him over to the ICC. There was even a South African court judgment on this. Of course, there is no way. I mean, let's be practical. There is no way South Africa, and let me stick out my neck to say any African country, I mean, apart from the few ones who don't even have armed forces of their own, arrest a sitting African president and hand him over to the ICC. There's no African government that is going to do that. Again, please, I will welcome a robust dissent on this matter. Yes, pressure will be brought, but like South Africa did, it smuggled him out. We didn't even know when the guy left South Africa until he landed in Khartoum at that time. And there were no sanctions against South Africa. So I'm saying Putin can effectively, safely go to South Africa for this summit meeting. The only people who can, should I say, hijack his plane will not do so, because that will be the Americans. They will not do so. And the only people okay, because it will mean a world war. You will be declaring war on Russia. It was an error of judgment, as far as I'm concerned, by the ICC. I am not defending Putin. I am not saying Putin does not have enough cases against him. But heck, there are leaders of other countries that I will not mention whose conduct of war, whether it's in Iraq, in Syria, in Vietnam, have been atrocious. I was still in the United States as a postgraduate student when the carpet bombing on Christmas Day under Nixon and Kissinger happened, when Hanoi was bombed for 24 hours on Christmas Day. America is supposed to be a Christian country. Vietnam is not. And yet that's what happened. Yes, you may claim ICC was not in existence at that time, but I put it to you that even if ICC was in existence, what were you going to do? Where is the force that ICC would have sent in to arrest the president of the most powerful country in the world? So I think Ramaphosa floated this idea as a way of getting out of his obligation to hand over Putin to the ICC. But it blew up in his face. And again, one keeps saying, be careful of agreements that you sign. Watch out for organizations that you join, because organizations have consequences. Don't go flying into an organization without thinking out what kind of problems this may create for you.
Thank you for that, sir. Talking about Putin, maybe it's a good segue. The fact that now South Africa is no longer going to be as easy as one would have expected for Putin. But at the same time, sir, it seems that quite a lot of things are going wrong for Russia of late regarding the war. We're seeing the pushback from Ukraine. Ukraine is now starting to get a lot closer to bringing the war to the streets of Russia. And at the same time, you know, Russian jets blowing up mid-air. There are reports that the Wagner forces are fighting against Russian forces in some areas. Are there any more cards for Russia to play here that are non-nuclear?
Yes, there are. I mean, Russia is fighting a non-nuclear country. I made reference to the Christmas Day carpet bombing of Hanoi by the United States. And America could do that because it knew there would be no intervention by it was the Chinese at that time. No, it was even the Russians who were also allies of North Vietnam. So there are still in Putin's arsenal some nasty things that he can do. I came across not a news item, an intelligence item, let me put it that way, where it said that the Ukrainian scientists had succeeded in modifying some of the missiles and rockets that they have. And the plan was for them to hit the Kremlin. And the plan was far advanced before the Americans got to know about it. And the Americans had to pull a lot of strings, make some strategic promises to Ukraine not to do so, while also alerting Russia that there was such a plan, but that they, the Americans, are sitting on that plan to ensure that doesn't happen. So, this is now a game of, it has it got to the point of balance of terror between Ukraine, aided and abetted by NATO and Russia, because these are the kind of things Russia also will have to keep in mind. If I escalate to this level, Ukraine now is getting to a point where it can retaliate to a level that even the Russian people may find unacceptable in terms of the losses. So I don't know. I'm inviting my friends on the platform to please join in this debate. I don't know why all of a sudden I feel some ray of optimism that by the end of this year, we may be seeing the end of this war. It's a smart move by Ukraine to have opened up a channel of communication with China and to have agreed the establishment of representational diplomats in the two capitals. That was a smart move because that also then puts some pressure on China to be more active positively. We also know that Lula from Brazil is pressuring China to be more active in peacemaking. Maybe it's all of this put together that is making me have this ray, just a ray, it's not a full-blown light, but a ray of hope that we may be seeing the end of this war by the end of this year.
But, sir, would Putin feel a little betrayed by China now going to talk to Ukraine directly? Because at one point, the communication was, in fact, throughout the war, since the beginning of the war, had been China and Russia were seen side by side, everyone standing side by side. And all of a sudden, China is beginning this mediator role by actually having the conversation. And President Zelensky, at the end of the conversation, he said it was a long and meaningful conversation. Wouldn't that be spiting Russia somewhat?
Well, I mean, this is superpower politics, isn't it? Russia has been patient. I must say that. Russia has been patient. No, I'm sorry. China has been patient with Russia. There is evidence now, intelligence leads, that China was not happy that Russia started that war while there was an international event going on in China. They were not happy about it. And I think that they feel, look, they bent over backwards to give Russia sufficient time to go in and do whatever it is they want to do. It's dragged on for too long. And China may be running out of some patience. Uh, he keeps talking to Putin, and openly too, China keeps saying, well, it's getting on too long. India is probably talking to Russia through China over this war. So Russia does not have an open check from the Chinese to do whatever it is he wants to do, and that China will be. In fact, Russia has already paid the price, for this war. And what is the price? It has brought China basically an Asiatic country into Europe, with with Russia playing second fiddle. Since the time of Peter the Great, one of the foreign policy objectives of Russia had been to ensure the dominance of Russia in that part of Europe, as well as, because don't forget, Russia is not really just a European country. It's also an Asian country, stretching, it owns, as a result of war, it owns some of the Japanese islands, and then it owns Siberia that stretches into Asia. It is now China, it's now Russia that seems to be shrinking while China is expanding and not meeting any resistance from Russia. So Russia has already paid the price for this war.
Since we've touched on about three presidents, or two or three presidents now, maybe I should keep on that line about presidents. And let me go to the United States, where President Joe Biden has announced his intention to run for re-election in 2024. And the voters seem to be kicking back, sir. They're saying that he's too old. How would you rate President Biden so far in his administration, and specifically to the point around age? What would you say to that?
What exactly are you saying? That I'm too old to be on this program? I'm too old to be running a podcast. I'm 81. Biden is only 80. And so he's still a small boy. There's still room for old people. To avoid getting into trouble, let me not make any more comparisons in terms of age. But on a serious note, I myself believe that not that being 80 is too old, not that, but that Biden himself is too old now for this job. You could tell the way he speaks. Yes, I know he has a medical issue, which goes also into the state of his health. Um, it's not really fluent in the way and manner in which he talks. He shows openly that he's guided, I won't say controlled, by his aides. I mean, I remember in the days of in the days when John F. Kennedy started the press interview. He was the one who started this format. Um, Having made his opening remarks, Kennedy would look up, you know, and the reporters will indicate that they want to speak, and Kennedy will, will point, Mr. Reston, New York Times, Miss so and so of Los Angeles Times, and so on. In the case of Biden, from the beginning, his aides will have written out the names of reporters he should call upon. And he doesn't even know where these reporters are seated. I mean, I had seen him call on, oh, Mr. Reston of the, he doesn't stretch out his hand, but he looks up, he doesn't know where, it's only until the man says, thank you, Mr. President, that he then knows. Can he undergo the rigor of an American election campaign, which is very, very rigorous, almost lasting 1 year? Can he, some of the stumbles that, and you recall our conversation on this platform when they first came in, and almost from day one started started stumbling. For example, this thing about democracy being the centerpiece of our foreign policy. Democracy cannot be the centerpiece of your foreign policy when the to maintain the global system, you have to not abolish, not have regime change, but you have to deal with Russia, Saudi Arabia, China. These are important people. And you went out from day one to antagonize them. Now, Saudi Arabia is applying to join BRICS. I understand there are 19 new applications that will be considered in the August meeting of BRICS. I got an invitation. Can you imagine? I got an information that we are one of the 19. And this came to me through some source that I respect a lot. And that actually that invitation had been before then since 2015. Now, on our platform, there are former PAMSECs, there are former special advisors to ministers who are on our platform who can confirm this. I'm not putting it out as information from me. This is what I heard, that we are one of the 19. And it was in an attempt to check the veracity of this that I got in touch with my sources. And, that's what I got as a feedback. But back to your core question, I really think that neither Biden nor Trump should run. I mean, Trump is what, 79, 78 or 79? And he's more active than Biden. But it's just that I think when it gets to the election, Americans will prefer Biden to Trump. A rape case is going on right now against Trump. Not that they will hold it against him. The American attitude towards Trump is boys will be boys. But how many of these kind of body blows can Trump himself take? It will not affect his base, but I think the majority of Americans would prefer Biden. Would this be good for America? Well, let the Americans decide that. Will it be good for the rest of the world? I think his re-election, if he's re-elected, will actually speed up the decay of the old world order and the beginning, well, it has already begun, the confirmation of the new world order.
I've got two questions for you, sir, before we go. I'll still keep it in line with presidents of different nations. We joked at the beginning of the program about whether or not I got an invitation to the king's coronation. Someone did, and he turned it down. He sent his vice president, and that is China. And some analysts have called it rather disrespectful, given who he sent. What is your view, sir, given that the individual that would be representing the Chinese president, if indeed he turns up, that is also someone who had clamped down on protesters during the riots that took place in Hong Kong in 2019, is the person that has been put forward to represent the Chinese government. What do you think about that, sir?
I think mistakes. I think mistakes, diplomatic blunders have been made on both sides. If a decision has been taken that all heads of states or presidents should be invited, I could then understand why, as a matter of routine, the president of China will be invited. But if not all presidents are going to be invited, and instead you are going to pick and choose which presidents you will invite. Yes, China is a superpower, but the president of China actually, since COVID-19, rarely travels out of China. He has started to do so, but he does it, it's not frequent, not a frequent occurrence. And if he's going to turn it down, then if he doesn't send his vice president, they will say he's been disrespectful. Now he sends a vice president whose past actually interface with King Charles III. Because if you will recall, it was King Charles III as Prince of Wales who actually represented the monarchy at the pulling down of the British flag in Hong Kong. And so I'm not, are you sure that this vice president that is Hong Kong you are thinking of rather than
Han Zeng,
yes.
sir.
No. Rather than, that is cracking down. It's not on an internal Chinese city, that is on Hong Kong. Because I didn't think that there was that openness about the the openness about the intervention of the Chinese personnel in the cracking down on Hong Kong.
Definitely.
Never, sorry?
Definitely Hong Kong, sir.
Definitely Hong Kong. Then that is a slap in the face of King Charles. That definitely is. But both will probably overlook it.
And finally, sir, I know you love music, and a big music icon has gone. How do you remember Harry Belafonte?
Harry Belafonte reminds me of my days in the United States. Actually, let me be vain a little bit. People will probably say, but Prof, you've been vain all throughout this program. We both burst onto the American scene around the same time. In 1962, when I went as a delegate of the World Youth Forum, and I stayed with a Jewish family in Brooklyn for 1 month. They took me to one of the outings by Harry Belafonte, and I recall the details are a bit vague in my head now. I recall after the show, I mean, obviously they had liaised with the organizers of the show, that they have an African student, you know. In those days, we were big shots to be an African student in the United States in the 60s. We were big shots, you know, not like now, where, you know, Trump will gladly send you back. You know, and they probably, you know, told them that they have an African student, you know, who should meet Harry Belafonte. So after the show, I was taken with my hosts to the back, and I met him. An incredibly handsome man with an incredible voice. I'd never heard of Calypso before. Mark you, I mean, I was coming from Nigeria, high life. That's what, you know, we played here. But those Calypso songs, Jamaica Farewell, the Banana Boat Show, oh Lord, I fell in love, not with Harry Belafonte, I fell in love with the West Indies. And later on, when I then, you know, some of them became my classmates at the university, an incredible people with an incredible culture. These are our cousins that are going to be our assets when we get our acts together. We don't forget that even the word diaspora came from the Jewish experience. But Pan-Africanism actually came from the West Indies, from a West Indian scholar. And the first Pan-African Congress, so I think either the first three were held there. I think the fourth or the fifth one that was then held in Manchester. So the Pan-Africanism that we embrace with so much fervor was born in the West Indies. So It just didn't mean only just music to me, although I have not got over my love for calypso music. And when I told my children that he had died, almost to one person they replied, "We remember you playing those records over and over again while we were growing up." And they also grew up to love calypso music. Um, but he was not just a musician. Now that should be made clear. And perhaps that is also what we should keep in mind, that whatever we may be, there is always a larger role that our status can help us in making us a better society. He later on, because he was an era, yes, it was the acceptable phase of the Black race, the acceptable phase of Black music. He made those assets available to Martin Luther King Jr. that he then joined in, in the protest marches that were done. He exposed them. I mean, Martin Luther King was killed. He was assassinated. Any of them could have been shot by some crazy white man all throughout those marches. But he was so close to the family that there is a picture actually going around at the funeral of Martin Luther King. It was Harry Belafonte who sat next to the Martin Luther King's wife, Cordelia, comforting her. I mean, that's an iconic picture. So he made his assets available for a cause, a noble cause, a just cause. And I do hope that even in these days when the whole world is in a turmoil, including our own country, that our musicians, our artists, will simply not regard themselves as artist simpliciter, but will make their acceptability available as, bridge over troubled waters, wherever those are in the world.
Thank you for that, sir. I can see someone has their hand raised. Can you unmute yourself and ask the question? Go ahead. Can you ask your question?
I am Savio Hazan. I'm glad to be part of this program, especially with one of the best foreign affairs ministers we have in our time. You spoke about Nigerian having special forces. I know this is very important, especially it comes handy when it's time like this to evacuate or to interfere in wars like this, especially rescuing. I remembered when one of the American citizens was kidnapped in Nigeria, or Nigeria, Chad, or something like that. America was able to organize its team, a special team, to come in and rescue from the Boko Haram sand, because they have stations very close around. But do you think Nigerians have enough hands? I think we have special forces, but are they as strong as you are suggesting? And do you think we have enough friends that will allow us to have stations, military bases around or within their countries to enable us move quickly to interfere, especially something like this that is happening in Sudan. If we had been very close to Sudan, our special forces would have moved in immediately and rescue our people. But unfortunately, yes, we have. But how many soldiers we do? What's the number of our soldiers? What is the capacity of Nigeria to interfere or intervene or go into countries like this within seconds and evacuate our people? What do you think, sir?
Thank you. Thank you very much, for your positive comments about me. I do appreciate that. No, we don't have enough forces. I was talking about a prescription I made in 1986, 87. By now, we would have had sufficient forces to undergo this mission. Right now, we don't. I know we have special forces which are involved in dealing with Boko Haram, with insurgents, robbers, and so on. Limited mandate, limited functions. Well, I hope, as I think it's Bolaji Akinyemi was said, we will now build on that really our special forces may now be called upon to go on other missions. But it will now mean building upon what we have, making resources available to them. Actually, maybe I will write about it in my memoirs. We were actually confronted with a similar situation in 1986, I believe. Around 2 a.m. in the morning, the telephone beside my bed rang. And I mean, I was fast asleep. So there were 5 of those phones. And tried to find out which one was ringing, and it became an issue. And I finally found it. And it was our ambassador in the Philippines who said Nigerian students have surrounded the embassy. They were about to break down the gate. The Filipino policemen and National Guard were standing by, but they needed his permission to invite them in and help, to secure the embassy from being overrun by our own Nigerian citizens. Now, I didn't think that. I thought this was way beyond my position. So I told him to give me 30 minutes and call me back in case I had difficulty getting him. I tried to raise Jordan Barracks, and I was told, well, do I know what time it is? The president is asleep. They couldn't, they couldn't wake him up with my call. And I tried to explain to the gentleman who obviously was the security man, the other of the line, that no, you needed to wake him up. And they said, sorry, their instructions were clear. So when the ambassador then called me back, I thought, well, what the heck? What was the worst thing that could happen? If I don't give permission and those boys enter, if they kill any of our officers, Now I will be blamed for not taking care of our embassy. So I then had to give him permission to invite the National Guard to come in, which under normal circumstances, as you all know, would have been a breach of international law, which was why they were saying, you have to invite us to come in. So, I mean, Philippines from Nigeria was such a far place that even if we had special forces, I wasn't thinking of them operating that far. I was thinking of them operating within the confines, of continental Africa. As regards your question, would fellow African countries allow us to station our forces in their territory, apart from the ECOMOG operations and apart from taking part in not only peacekeeping, but security operations in Somalia and other parts of Africa. There is, I still believe from my own experience that when things are properly explained, yes, there is no doubt about it that there is some envy there. I know Sankara wanted a Nigerian base in Burkina Faso, but such was the relationship militarily between the president and his chief of defense staff, General Abacha at that time, that it wasn't something that IBB will contemplate. But Burkina Faso wanted us to send a base, to put a base there. And we've neglected, I must say, we've neglected the African countries in the Indian Ocean. And I'm saying this again from a personal experience, because as a minister, I was accused at all our meetings, you don't visit us. I even remember the king of Lesotho, I think, yeah, king of Lesotho. I know that's not in the Indian Ocean, but accosting IBB at a conference, one non-aligned conference, and saying, look, you ignore us. I'm not saying you yourself personally should come, but let your minister visit us. Instead, you get to Zambia, you stop. You get to Zimbabwe, you stop. Lesotho is an independent country, and we are doing our own bit, standing up to the apartheid South Africans. Let your foreign minister come and visit us. Just his presence would, he will see the way we Lesothans think of, Nigeria. And I also recall that Mauritius, they wanted me to come and visit. Unfortunately, I didn't stay long enough as a minister because IBB then promised them that I will come. But honestly, the amount of travel that a foreign minister goes through, because there are international conferences he needs to attend, whether regional level, ECOWAS, AU, United Nations, non-aligned this and all that kind of thing, that even, what's his name now, the president of Cuba, is dead now, Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro also accosted the IBB on the sideline of a non-aligned conference to say, why? Is it because you don't want to offend Americans? We admire Nigeria. We recognize Nigeria, but you won't come to visit us. And, typical IBB, my foreign minister will come. And he turns to me and says, your next trip to the United States, you will stop in Cuba. And I say, of course, yes, sir. But after we get back, I say, sir, if I want to go to Cuba, I will have to go to Cuba directly, then maybe visit Brazil, but to go to the US and stop in Cuba, that would be a slap in the face of it. But anyway, all I'm saying is there is goodwill for us that we've never really exploited. You may be right that when it then comes to stationing forces, even France and some of these superpowers may engineer opposition towards us. But let us try. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And on that note, we'll end the program tonight. We'll be back same time next week. And that would be just before the coronation. So yeah, coronation commentary would have to be the week after that. Yes, it would have to be the week after that. But a lot happening in the world. We'll be back same time next week. Thank you, everyone, to our viewers and to our contributors. Much appreciated. We'll see you next week. Good night, sir.
Good night.
Good night, sir.